Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really going to challenge the whole idea of stereo. We're diving into a world where sound isn't just, left and right. Think about it like a three-dimensional object. Sound swirling above you, maybe an instrument precisely behind you, vocals floating right over your head. That's the world of Dolby Atmos for music, and we're cutting through all the marketing hype.
Absolutely. Look, if you're listening, you probably want to know, is this spatial audio thing the future? Or is it just, I don't know, a fancy EQ setting that's gonna fade away?
Right.
So to get you that clarity, we've pulled together a ton of sources. We've got deep dives from magazines like What Hi-Fi, those intense debates on forums like Reddit and AVS.
Oh yeah, forums get heated.
They do. And we've even got insights straight from the audio engineers actually mixing these tracks. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding the potential, but also, really crucially, the pitfalls.
Okay, so let's unpack this core shift first, because it really does change how music gets made and how we listen. For decades, it's all been channel-based sound, right? Like 5.1, 7.1, even just plain old stereo.
Yep, basically telling a specific speaker, okay, you play this sound.
Exactly. Fixed channels.
But Atmos, it just tears up that whole map. It introduces what they call object-based audio.
Okay. Object-based, what's the difference?
Well, think of stereo like painting. It's flat, two-dimensional, stuck on the canvas. Object-based audio is more like sculpting. You're not dealing with fixed channels anymore.
Oh.
You're dealing with defined coordinates in a 3D space.
And that's where that big number comes in, up to 128 objects. Why does that matter so much for the experience?
It's all about precision, immense control. Instead of just sending, say, part of the guitar to the left surround channel, the engineer tells that specific guitar sound object, okay, exist right here, coordinate XYZ.
Got it. A specific point in space.
Exactly. That object has its position, its size, even movement defined. And then the clever bit is the decoder in your receiver or soundbar calculates how to render that object perfectly using whatever speakers you actually have.
So it adapts to your setup.
It does. And that calculation, that rendering, that's what creates this incredibly precise three-dimensional soundscape we hear.
All right, so once you have that system running, the promise is a sonic revolution for music.
Pretty much immediate. Because of that object approach, instruments, vocals, they can just float freely in that 3D space. You see audiophiles on the forums just raving about it, especially with remix classics, albums that already had complex production.
So what are the big wins people talk about? What does it actually feel like?
The sources keep highlighting two main things beyond just wider sound. First, ethereal vocals.
Ethereal. How so?
Well, because you can place that vocal object slightly above the main speaker level, it feels disconnected from the hardware, almost like it's floating in the room separate from the speakers.
Huh.
Yeah, like a ghost almost. And second, enhanced depth. Instruments aren't just layered flat anymore, they each get their own little spot in this sound sphere. It makes the whole thing feel genuinely, room-filling.
Okay, that sounds really compelling. But say I'm thinking about investing, or I just got the gear. Where do I start? What are the tracks that really prove this concept? We need some benchmarks.
Absolutely. And the consensus across What Hi-Fi and various audiophile threads is actually super clear on this. The absolute benchmark right now. The one that seems to have sold a lot of people.
Let me guess. Pink Floyd.
You got it. Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon, the 50th anniversary remaster. People consistently call it amazingly immersive and dynamic. It's the go-to.
Okay, but why that specific album? What makes it the standard bearer?
Well, think about the original album. It was already dense with sound effects, right? It even had a quadraphonic mix back in the day.
Right, the clocks, the cash register.
Exactly. In Atmos, those effects move with incredible precision, not just around you, but distinctly above you. And that bit people always mention where the vocals go all ethereal, that's because the object placement really does make the voice feel like it's detached, soaring overhead. It perfectly shows off what height channels can do with complex material.
Okay, so Pink Floyd is the complex benchmark.
Yeah.
What about something more track-focused? The sources mentioned the Beatles 1 Remastered 2.
Yeah, that's another key one. Great recommendation. The beauty there is often in the clarity and the space it creates. Those iconic tracks, remixed for Atmos, suddenly let those famous layered harmonies just spread out almost like a dome over you.
Giving them room to breathe.
Exactly. That complexity in the older recordings finally gets the spaciousness it needed without sounding, cluttered.
And we have to mention Fleetwood Mac Rumors. That one comes up constantly as well. Why Rumors?
Rumors is just loved for that incredible sonic tapestry, isn't it? In Atmos, those delicate layers, the guitars, percussion, All those harmonies, which sounded great in stereo but maybe a bit congested sometimes.
Yeah, you see that.
They just have room now. They spread out. The result is the sound that genuinely fills the room. It feels less like listening to a recording and more like the band is kind of playing right there in your space. These three, they really define the high watermark for the format right now.
Okay, that's a lot of positive buzz, but let's pump the brakes a bit, because when I look through those same audiophile forums, there's also a lot of criticism. People saying, frankly, that a lot of Atmos mixes are just bad.
And that's the critical paradox here, isn't it? The technology itself is powerful, potentially amazing, but the sources all stress that the human element makes the quality wildly inconsistent. You, the listener, really have to actively seek out those praised mixes.
And avoid the duds.
And definitely avoid what people widely call the overmixed ones that feel gimmicky.
Okay, what does gimmicky actually mean in this context? Does it just sound flying around too much?
That's usually the main side, yeah. A gimmicky mix tends to prioritize unnecessary spectacle over actual immersion. It's like the mixer felt they had to use the height channels just because they're there.
So stuff gets panned overhead aggressively.
Exactly. In a way that's distracting, maybe unnatural. It just feels forced. And honestly, it can ruin the experience instead of making it better.
So the tech is only as good as the person using it. We found a really good point from Mark Gustafson, who actually mixes in Atmos. He talks about this artistic challenge.
Yeah, Gustafson's insight is crucial. He says the key has to be balancing subtlety and spectacle. His point is, if you push too much stuff into those height channels, it just overwhelms you. It makes the music feel disjointed.
So less is more sometimes.
Often, yeah. The best mixes, he suggests, use height sparingly. Maybe for things like vocal trails, reverb tails, subtle background textures, things that add contextual space, not chaos. When mixers apply that discipline, that's when it becomes genuinely transformative.
But okay. The mix quality is one hurdle. The other big reality check is this setup, right? I mean, if you just plug your Apple TV into some old soundbar, you're not really getting Atmos, are you? The forums constantly link the pros to the cons of needing the right gear.
You absolutely hit the nail on the head there. It's non-negotiable, really. Proper Atmos requires the right speaker placement, actual height channels, or at least decent upward-firing speakers, plus a compatible receiver or soundbar that can process it all.
And calibration matters too.
Oh, hugely. The system needs to know your room's dimensions, the selective surfaces, all that, to render those XYZ coordinates accurately. If your setup's off, the sound objects won't land where the mixer intended. And, well, you lose the magic.
Right. And there's one more non-negotiable, especially for serious listeners. Lossless audio. Why is that so critical specifically for spatial audio?
It comes back to that object-based design. When you heavily compress audio, you start losing the fine detail and the spatial data, that precise coordinate information that tells the system exactly where each sound object should be in 3D space.
So compression makes the 3D image fuzzy.
Pretty much. You get artifacts, the placement becomes blurry, less distinct. To really appreciate the spatial enhancement, the clarity, the separation, audiophile stress, you need lossless streaming. Services like Apple Music, Tidal, Amazon Music HD, they're essential because they deliver the tracks without that lossy compression. You need the original data integrity.
So this promise of immersive freedom, it comes with strings attached, strict technical needs, and a need for artistic judgment from the mixers.
It does. It requires some homework from the listener and real discipline from the creator.
But when those things align, it seems the format really does work across different styles of music. It's not just classic rock getting the treatment.
Exactly, and that's important. It shows it's not just a nostalgia trip. The sources highlight successes across contemporary genres, which is a really good sign for its longevity.
Looking at the lists we compiled, yeah, there's a lot of variety. Modern pop, The Weeknd's Dawn FM comes up a lot for its dynamic use of space. It sounds like an album designed for spatial audio.
Right, it uses sound design creatively, not just instrument placement. But then you also see mentions for, say, Taylor Swift's Midnights.
Which is known for being more subtle.
Exactly. It shows Atmos doesn't always mean things flying over your head.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just about creating a cleaner, more defined space for everything so it doesn't sound crowded. More clarity, more separation.
And classic rock fans aren't left out, obviously. We saw Elton John's Honky Chateau mentioned for enhancing depth. And even hip-hop listeners point to Don Toliver's Life of a Don as having really exceptional mixing.
It really shows how malleable the format is. Which brings us to the why. Why are engineers embracing this? It comes down to the creative potential.
We found a great quote from Hans Martin Buff, who's worked with Peter Gabriel. He put it nicely. He said, Atmos lets us expand the stereo field into a sphere, making music feel alive.
That's a perfect image. Taking that flat stereo line and blowing it up into a globe of sound where every element can have its own distinct place.
Yeah. And mastering engineer Brian Lucy seems convinced it's the future. Because, as he puts it, it allows for true immersion, placing elements where they belong in space.
It's about realism, isn't it? Aligning the listening experience more closely with how we hear sound in a real performance space. Using dimension to create context and realism, not just volume or spectacle.
That difference dimension versus just loudness or effects feels really key. It suggests this might actually be a lasting evolution in how we experience recorded music.
So if we boil it all down for you, Dolby Atmos. Yeah, it can dramatically elevate how you experience music, unparalleled immersion, potentially, and it's a big but.
It's two crucial things.
Right. First, the quality is totally dependent on the original mix. You have to actively seek out the good ones and, frankly, avoid the gimmicky, overdone stuff.
And second, the playback quality. You really need lossless streaming and a properly set up, calibrated system to get the true benefit. Skip those, and you're kind of missing the whole point of the technology.
It creates this interesting situation. Richard Whittaker pointed out that Atmos sort of democratizes immersive audio, making it easier to access through streaming, even headphones to some extent.
Oh, yeah.
But the actual art of mixing it well is still really demanding. It requires huge discipline, careful placement of every single sound object.
So you have this easier access colliding with a really high technical and artistic ceiling, which kind of leaves you with a big question, doesn't it, looking ahead?
Yeah.
Well, since more and more people can access spatial audio now, what's the right balance going to be? How much creative freedom should mixers have to put sounds anywhere in that 3D sphere? Versus how much discipline is needed to make sure the result actually sounds good, natural, immersive, not just distracting. That balance. That feels like it's going to define the sound of music for the next few years. It's this huge sphere of possibility, but it still needs that sharp human judgment to really make it sing.